Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of On Screen. I'm your host, Dylan Wright, and I'm going to be taking you on a journey through film and television. Now, my first episode, I talked about remakes, and hopefully you guys checked it out, but if you didn't, you could check out that episode on the Woodward YouTube page. And every episode that I'll produce will be on that page, so definitely check it out if you haven't already. So this week, I really want to talk about an article that Rolling Stone just came out with. Actually, it was the cover story on their latest issue, and that is the 100 greatest TV shows of all time. With greatest lists and the best of whatever, there's always going to be some contention from everybody that has an opinion. There'll be somebody who says, oh, my favorite show didn't even make the top 20, so these guys have no idea what they're talking about. And that's kind of what I like about top 10 or top 20, top 100 lists. It starts a conversation that normally might not have happened unless this list was, put in front of people's faces. So I don't really have a problem with a magazine coming out with what they call a definitive list of things. It's great to just talk about it. I love hearing what people think should be in what spot and hearing their argument about why they did that. And it's not like just one writer from Rolling Stone decided to make this top 100 list of all of his favorite TV shows. They actually polled a bunch of people that have been in television, a lot of journalists they polled. I think they said that they asked Gary Marshall before he died, and he's a famous producer and director. He did Happy Days, and he directed the Princess Diaries movies, which are a guilty pleasure of mine. But the thing about this list that really got me interested is that of the top 10 shows, 8 of the 10 were aired within 20 years of where we are right now. And I think that's something that's really interesting, that to kind of ask the question, are we in a golden age of television? Sure, 2 of the other ones, All in the Family and The Twilight Zone, only ran from, Twilight Zone ran from 59 to 64, and All in the Family was 71 to 79. But the rest are from, the 2000s and the 90s and around there. And it's just really cool that we have these amount of shows that have come out in the past 2 decades that we're able to laud as the best of television. You have shows like Breaking Bad, which is one of my personal favorite shows, and The Wire and Mad Men and Seinfeld, which I grew up watching on reruns and sometimes live when my dad was feeling like being a good parent and showing his kid something that went right over his head. But it's easy to make the argument that we're really in a golden age of television. The storytelling that we've been able to accomplish with these shows is just something that hasn't been really explored in the past with television. It's something that normally like rated R movies could do, or movies that Oscar-nominated winning movies went into. I mean, back in the 50s, you couldn't have a show about a chemistry teacher who gets cancer and then decides to cook crystal meth to try and earn money for his family. We've just been taking more risks and gaining more rewards from the type of stories that we've decided to try and tell through television. One could even argue that television is almost better quality than film at this point. You have a longer time to tell the story, a couple seasons, lots of episodes, whereas movies usually have 1.5 hours to 3 hours if you're really pushing your audience to really try and stay that long. But the thing about television is that it manages to keep people's attentions week to week in a way that film wouldn't be able to do if it decided to go that format. I mean, even back in the day, you had the serialized film where people would come back week to week to try and see like the cliffhanger. The serial, like for instance, there was a serialized Batman I remember that I used to watch. I think it was back in the 40s, where each episode or movie episode would end with Batman like falling off a cliff and being like, "Oh my God, Batman's gonna die," and you'd have to come back next week to see the thrilling conclusion. So they were, even back in the day, film was trying to do television before television was even a thing. They found the power in episodic storytelling that you wouldn't be able to accomplish in a 1.5 hour action thriller. And while that was probably a marketing tool to get people into the theaters, it thrilled people to want to have to come back week to week to try and find out what happened to their heroes. And television's doing that now on a daily basis. The character work within television is amazing nowadays. You have nuanced characters like Donald Draper, the mysterious advertising agent who is living a life that wasn't his to begin with and is trying to hide from what he used to be, this person that he used to be, and really can't come to grips with who he is until the end of the series almost. You have characters like Omar Little from The Wire, who he kills people, but he has a certain code that he follows in the streets of Baltimore. It's a character that, sure, you might have like a bit part in a movie because there's only so much time a movie could have to explore these kinds of characters, but we're able to really get in deep to the psyche of who these characters are week to week because of the format of television. Television used to be just like the graveyard of where people who didn't really make it in film went to die. You would see people coming onto television after their acting careers didn't pan out, or if they had a flop and they would just like go back to television, or oftentimes it was a stepping stone into the movies. Like, for instance, Eddie Murphy started out on Saturday Night Live and then went into Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours and all those movies and became a movie star, but he started first in television. It wasn't, oh, I'm a huge star in the movies and now I'm going to make my big break into television. And really it still isn't that today, but I feel like it's kind of running towards that direction because of the quality of story that television is now attempting. It's really, really interesting to see. And I think we're in such a good era for like film and television because of how good of quality these shows are. I mean, you have shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer that went on from the 90s to the early 2000s, and it's a show that, oh yeah, it's vampires and this girl that's killing them, this vampire slayer, but they're able to delve into such deep issues. Like the first couple seasons was talking about high school as a literal version of hell, and it enabled like young teens to, you know, kind of come to grips with what they were dealing with within the high school boundaries. And you have shows that just delve into these deep philosophical arguments and thoughts that normally wouldn't be talked about in everyday conversation, but they manage to make it a water cooler topic because it's so entertaining through these television shows. And I think we could really be grateful that we grew up in this realm where now television isn't this stupid little kid brother of film and has really become a rival of sorts, or even at times a superior to film. So now it's time for my Netflix pick of the week, and in honor of Luke Cage, the recent Netflix Marvel show to come out, I'm going to recommend the very first Marvel Netflix exclusive that came out, and that's Daredevil. This Daredevil is so much better than the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. It's not even funny. It does everything right that the Ben Affleck Daredevil did wrong. I mean, Charlie Cox is a great Matthew Murdock, great Daredevil, and it's just so much more superior than the one that came before it. That's not even funny. So definitely check that out. My Netflix movie pick of the week is definitely a movie that I had so much fun seeing in the theaters, and I'm so glad it's on Netflix so that I can watch it whenever. It's Zootopia. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a kids movie. Why am I recommending a kids movie? But it's Disney, people, and it's so good, and it talks about such adult issues that in society, like racial issues and gender, equality and stereotypes, and it's a really interesting and deep kids movie, and it's hilarious the whole time. I mean, there's a Breaking Bad joke in it that I laughed hysterically at, so definitely check that out as well. That's going to be it for this week's episode of On Screen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and if you guys have any suggestions for future topics, please put them in the comment section. I would love to hear them. Until next time, take care.